Evening, thanks for everybody for attending the meeting tonight. The meeting is now live and being recorded. This meeting will be live streamed and recorded, made available to view via council website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images or audios of those individuals speaking will be publicly available to all via the recordings on the council's website. Before we start the meeting, this is the first time that the committee has met since the sad passing of our colleague, Councillor Christine Forehead, who represented the Van Ward in Caerphilly. I would therefore like to hold a minute's silence in memory of Christine and record our sincere condolences to her family and friends at this sad time. Okay, thank you everybody. If we can move it on to agenda item number 1, to note the appointment of Vice Chair. Members are asked to note that Councillor Powell has been appointed Vice Chair of the Education and Social Services Scrutiny Committee, and in the absence of Councillor Parry, I've been asked to chair this evening's meeting. Fastest promotion ever. Okay, thanks for that. Would like to move on to agenda item number 2, to receive apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Parry, Skivens and Winslade.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Moving on to agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibilities to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on the agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Codes of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations?
One hand raised, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a personal interest in relation to item 9 on the agenda. My daughter, who is actually here with us tonight, has an individual development plan at Tirabirth School, so I have a personal but non-prejudicial interest. Thanks.
That's been noted.
Yep, thank you for that. That's been noted. Are there any other declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. We move on to agenda item 4. To approve and sign the following minutes: Education and Social Services Scrutiny Committee held on the 2nd of September 2025. Okay, just go through them page by page. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5 and page 6. Do we have somebody to move those, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Heron. And do we have somebody to second those?
I'll second that.
Who's that, Mark? Can you capture that?
Councillor Jack and Dawson.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jack and Dawson. Could we have the voting slip up, please?
That's on your screens now.
Okay. Seems okay. No issues with the voting. Everybody okay?
Yeah, that's been carried, Chair. 12 votes for and 2 abstentions, no votes against.
Okay, now we move on to agenda item number 5. Consideration of any matter referred to this committee in accordance with the call-in procedure. Have we got anything, Mark?
No matters have been called in for this meeting, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. Moving on to agenda item number 6, Education and Social Services Scrutiny Committee, the Forward Work Programme. Report pages 7 to 20.
Thank you, Chair. Members are asked to consider the forward work programme for the Education and Social Services Scrutiny Committee alongside the Cabinet forward work programme in their packs, and to suggest any amendments or additions in accordance with the criteria set out in Appendix 3 of your packs. The next meeting for this committee will be on the 27th of January, and as you can see, there's a Welsh in Education Strategic Plan annual report, and also CCTV in schools stroke condition survey report as requested by one of the members of this committee. And so if members are happy, I would like to seek permission to publish the forward work programme with any amendments which are raised onto the council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any questions on that part of the report?
Councillor Chacon-Dawson.
Councillor Chacon-Dawson.
Yeah, I did mention in the pre-meeting, I've got a suggestion for a item to be added, if that's possible, to look at teachers' mental health and self-evaluated coping of teachers and pupils, given that the amount of violence within the schools and the challenging behaviours that affect teachers' well-being and pupils' engagement. And this, I've found evidence of this. The National Behaviour Survey, the Teachers Union, various BBC programmes, and not just this. I've got personal insight from pupils from Blackwood and a pupil from Lewis Boys School who've told me about incidents of fighting, swearing at teachers, and other incidents as such.
Thanks for that, Councillor Chacon-Dawson. Mark,
Okay, so that's a report on a strategy for the well-being and welfare of teachers, Councillor Chacon-Dawson.
And pupils' engagement, because if this is going on in class, then how are they supposed to, focus on their work and not be distracted from their work?
Okay, well, thank you for that addition, Councillor Chacon-Dawson. Over to you, Chair.
Nothing to add, not from the chamber. Nothing to add over there. Doesn't look like. So we've got someone to move in a second. Okay, could I have somebody to move that, please?
I'll move, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Heron, thank you. And second.
I'll second.
Councillor Padfield, yeah.
Councillor Aldworth.
Oh, Councillor Aldworth, sorry. Okay, thank you for that, everybody. We move on to agenda item number 7.
No, we go to the vote, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Mark told me that I would do this, yeah. Can we go to the vote, please?
And that's the polls should be on your screens now.
I see Councillor Roberts has his hand up.
Yeah. Do you want to bring Councillor
Yeah,
Roberts?
Councillor Roberts, I can see you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Diolch yn fawr. Hiya, Mark, as well. It's just to say, I hope you don't mind. Today is my first day, really, back, having been away, having had surgery and recovery. I've not had time to read up on our agenda, so I hope you don't mind. This evening, the only thing I've intended to vote on is what we've just voted on now. I don't feel it's appropriate that I vote for anything else. So I do intend to stay in the meeting. I'm keen to stay in the meeting, but because I've not had enough time to look at the report, because I've not been around, I intend to abstain on everything else. I hope that explains it. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Roberts. That's noted.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr.
Okay.
And Chair, we've had the results through from the vote on the forward work programme, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I've got another hand up. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for taking over today. I'm still unwell, so I'm at home, but I still want to participate where I can. All right.
Okay, thank
So
you for that. Thank you for that,
thank you
Councillor
very much.
Barry. It's appreciated.
Thank
Moving on
you.
to agenda item 7. Development of specialist additional learning provision for children with additional learning needs is pages 21 to 40 in the report. Can I pass you over to Councillor Carol Andrews, Cabinet Member for Education and Communities?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. The purpose of this report is to update scrutiny members in respect of the consultation regarding the development of specialist resource bases. Further to Cabinet approval on the 17th of September 2025, a statutory notice in respect of the consultation regarding the development of specialist resource bases was published, and the formal objection period ran between the 22nd of September and the 19th of October 2025. Under Section 49 of the School Standards and Organisation Wales Act 2013, when objections have been received, proposers must publish a summary of the statutory objections and the proposer's response to those objections in the objection report. 2 objections were received via email and in the medium of English. To discharge the Council's duty under the School Organisation Code 2018, there is now a requirement for Cabinet members to give due regard to the content of the objection report and make a final determination as to whether to implement the proposal as outlined in the report. Should Cabinet authorise progression of the project, a decision letter will be published setting out clearly the reasons for the decision with reference to the School Organisation Code 2018. The proposal will then progress to full implementation as outlined in the report. Implementation across the 5 sites will be in a phased manner as you can see in the documentation, with an anticipated effective date at all sites being no later than the 31st of May 2026, with the exception of the second secondary class proposed for Idris Davis 3 to 18 school. All the provisions will be managed by the head teacher and governing body of the schools on behalf of the local authority. Admission for children whose needs require such additional learning provision is the responsibility of the local authority, who is the decision maker, and this will be facilitated through the local authority additional learning needs panel. So the recommendations in 3.1 ask scrutiny members to consider the information contained in the objection report, endorse the recommendation to Cabinet to proceed to implementation of the proposal for the development of the specialist additional learning provision for children with additional learning needs in the form of resource bases across the borough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Andrews. Sarah, this is the lead for Include ALN. Do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. That moves on to the questions. Are there any questions that we refer from the pre-meeting? I'll take those first, if anybody else could put their hand up. Councillor Marina Shacken-Dawson.
Thank you, Chair. Why will it cost more for the Idris Davis School than it does for the Gumvron Cumrumni? Sorry, I hope I pronounced that properly. That's one question. Shall I give another one, or do you want to answer that first?
I'm going to take that question quickly. So the calculations for each of the schools depends on the needs with the pupils. So that's why you may see some differences between the amount per school, and also the YG Cumrumni one is for 2 classes. And the other one is for up to 3 classes. So it'll be a combination of things: number of classes and the needs of the pupils.
Right. Okay. And there's another one about costs. The grants are £1,177,298, but the total pressure is 1.244 million. Does this mean we're not receiving all the cost pressures to complete the additional SRBS?
So what I can say with regards to this is, at the point this report was written, we were obviously identifying funding which was available in year. But what I can say is, in the workings with regards to the budget for 26-27, then we are factoring in capacity linked to the additional classes referenced in this report. I'm just having a little look in here as well. Obviously in here, it's not just the cost of the classes, it'll also link to there'll also be transport implications. So
that's my next question, actually.
Yeah. So it's a difficult one with regards to transport, because obviously we need to work on an average figure, because obviously, you know, it's dependent on where the pupil lives, and obviously the base that they end up having a placement. So we do it on an average that is referenced in this report, and certainly in the budget preparation and information we're building up for next year's budget, that is being factored into that as well. So you know, the cost for the class is a little bit more certain than the transport side of things.
Right. Because my question was, if the pupils with LNA are being focused in certain schools, will this alleviate cost pressures if chaperones and drivers can transport multiple pupils in one vehicle? Would that reduce cost pressures of the transport? Or you don't really know yet?
So I can again give a broad view on that. There is a matrix that our colleagues in inclusion and transport complete with regards to sort of meeting the needs of the pupils, and that will sort of determine or support the request for transport. So it really is at individual level. There may be circumstances where pupils travel at individual level. Equally, they may travel in a shared taxi, a shared minibus, etc. It's assessed pupil by pupil.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Shack and Dawson. Thanks for the response, Jean. We have a question from Councillor Colin Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. I'll call it. It's more of a comment, really. It's going back to the objections. There was 2 objections, and it's disappointing to see that when analysing 2 objections received as part of the staffing notice provided to assist Cabinet in decision making. Oops, sorry, the wrong one. Both objectors initially supported the proposal for special resource base at Rooster David. But what they're basically saying then, they're saying that believe it will directly benefit pupils. However, they now oppose the proposal, stating they were misinformed. Their concern includes the potential loss of existing facilities and the lack of priority access for current pupils, which they find unacceptable. Unless I'm reading it wrong, I mean, basically what they're saying is it's okay for children in Rooster David to have this resource, but not for other children. Is there any comments? And I know Councillor Chack and Dawson want to come in on this with a question as well.
I'm happy to wait for the additional question first.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, would you like to have Shack?
Yeah, I'll give you the
Dawson's
additional question. So, okay, Chair. After the officer's explanation, were the objectors satisfied that their concerns were not warranted, that these factors would not have impacted the current school provision of pupils, or did they agree it would enhance the provision due to specialist skills being brought into the school?
Okay, thank you for your comment and your questions. In terms of the information that we had from the 2 objectees, they were the same objection. And in relation to the comment around being misinformed or given false information, certainly the original consultation report outlines clearly that the specialist resource provision development is for pupils across the whole of the local authority. It wasn't suggested that the provision that was being developed across any of the new schools would be specifically for the pupils within those schools. So in terms of the comment, you're quite right that was made clear. In terms of any further information, we haven't got any further information from the 2 people that objected, but we obviously were able to provide information to reassure that, as I've said here in scrutiny before, the schools that we identified for this proposal were schools with surplus places, schools across the borough to provide the geographical reach, and certainly there was no expectation that in any instance we would be taking away facilities from children in mainstream in order to support children with additional learning needs.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Councillor Gordon and Councillor Marina Shackendorsen, would you like to come back on that? Are we okay to move on?
Yeah,
I'm
thank you,
okay,
Chair.
thank you.
Okay, thank you both. We have another question from Councillor Pat Cook. Thank you, Pat.
I know with regard to the objections that have been raised, I know that the school concerned were unhappy about the potential loss of existing school facilities. And I wondered if the officer could give us some guidance on that, please.
So our hypothesis from the objections was that the objectees were considering that using facilities, i.e. classrooms within the school, would take away facilities from children who already attend. That clearly is not the case, because we are, as I've already said, we are working with schools with surplus places, and we're able to enhance the facilities across those schools and use the available space in the schools to support children with additional learning needs, as well as obviously continuing to support all the children in mainstream.
Okay, are we okay with the response, Councillor Cook?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one hand showing on the screen, Councillor Farina Childs.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little bit of clarification, really. In 8.7, it says about the impact or possible impact on transport costs of 420,000, which I understand, but also states in the same paragraph there about the cost of £7,000 for a pupil to be educated then in the borough, or 28.5k throughout the borough. So wouldn't that offset that figure or not? Because obviously it seems to be quite a bit of savings by having the pupils taught inside the borough.
Yeah, I mean that would be the case. I mean, obviously there's the cost of the placements, the additional classes, and the transport costs. But yeah, I mean certainly it would be a more cost-effective option for those pupils to be taught within the borough. But it is an increase in pressure with regards to increasing numbers within the borough. So yes, it does avoid a higher cost, but obviously it's still an additional cost the authority needs to sort of fund or support. So yes, it is the most cost-effective method. I'm just talking from a financial perspective. I'm sure my colleagues over there will also say that it's beneficial in terms of those pupils staying in the borough as well, and we would be able to give you some more detail on that.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I mean, our responsibility is to ensure that we're focused where we can on meeting the needs of children within our borough, and therefore developing appropriate and suitable provision to enable us to do that effectively. There are a very few occasions where, as a local authority, we have to consider options outside of the borough, but this proposal is enabling us to extend the reach and the capacity of our specialist provision in county to meet the needs of children in our borough.
Okay, thank the officers for that response. Councillor Farina Childs, are we happy with the response to move on?
Yeah, most definitely. I do fully support this anyway, but I just wanted some clarification, so thank you very much.
Okay, okay, thanks for that. Recommendations, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As the Cabinet member outlined in her introduction, the recommendations are on page 22 of your PACS members. 3.1, prior to a report being presented to Cabinet, scrutiny members are asked to A, consider the information contained in the objection report, and B, endorse the recommendation to Cabinet to proceed to implementation of the proposal for the development of specialist additional learning provision for children with additional learning needs in the form of resource bases across the borough. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. Could we have a move on the report, please?
I can move that. Oh, sorry. Go on, you do.
Councillor Shagan Dawson.
Oh, I thought somebody else had spoken, but yeah, I'll move that.
Okay, and somebody to second it, please.
I'll second it, Councillor Fincharles.
Okay, thank you for that. Look at that one, Mark. Okay, if we go to the vote via Teams, the voting slip is up. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, that's carried unanimously, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That's agenda item 7 complete. We move on to agenda item 8, safeguarding. Page 41 to 50 in the report. Councillor Carol Andrews, Cabinet Member for Education and Communities, to lead on the report.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to update members regarding the work of the Education Service to support schools and education settings. Safeguarding is a statutory duty under the Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act 2014 and Wales Safeguarding Procedures 2019. The local authority embeds safeguarding in its culture, policies and corporate plan 2023 to 2028. Annual self-evaluations and contributions to corporate assessments ensure safeguarding practices are effective. Data informs the National Multi-Agency Safeguarding Performance Framework. There is multi-agency collaboration with the local authority working with children's services, health, police and others to maintain robust safeguarding in schools. It participates in national and regional groups and forums to inform policy and practice. The local authority's safeguarding policy aligns with national guidance, Circular 238/2022. Training for schools and governors follows the National Safeguarding Training Framework. Support and oversight is provided by daily safeguarding advice and guidance is provided to education services. Allegations against practitioners are managed collaboratively and physical interventions are monitored for safety and compliance, and Operation Encompass and MARAC updates support learner wellbeing post-domestic incidents. The local authority integrates prevent duty into policies and training with a coordinated approach via the Gwent Prevent Delivery Plan, which is 2023 to 2026, and systems are in place to monitor discriminatory incidents. The local authority supports schools in addressing peer-on-peer sexual harassment and child sexual abuse, guided by national action plans. Schools undergo regular safeguarding audits with mid-cycle reviews to ensure compliance and continuous improvement. Updates from key safeguarding bodies are disseminated across schools and local authority staff to maintain awareness and consistency. The recommendations in 3.1 ask members to note the contents of this report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Andrews. Mandy Morris, Education Safeguarding Coordinator, do you have anything to add?
Nothing more to add from me, thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to the pre-meeting questions. Marina Shakan Dawson.
Thanks, Chair. Is safeguarding for councillors the same as that for governors? And if so, should we attend both, or now that it's in-house, would one set of training be sufficient? Shall I ask the other questions, or does somebody want to get that question first?
Do you want to batch them together, Marina?
Right. What checks are in place as strategies to ensure this training is completed within a time frame? Are teachers trained to recognise new pupils if new pupils have inappropriate attachments, which might be an indication of safeguarding issues? Are all schools enabled to use physical restraints or just special schools? And I had a last question, but I couldn't read it last time. I just understood now what it meant. Does training consider the safeguarding issues of pupils from other pupils, the danger of issues that other pupils might face from other pupils? If you that was a bit of a mouthful. I hope you understood the last question.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shagan Dawson. Do we have a response from officers?
I'm not necessarily going to go in the right order, I'm sorry, but I'll try and capture some of it and then Mandy can join in. In terms of restrictive physical interventions, Schools are, of course, encouraged to undertake appropriate training around restrictive physical intervention, but also practices that would support them to de-escalate. All schools are audited to make sure that their safeguarding practices are robust, and our audit includes discussions with schools around their practices to ensure that they are clear about their obligations in relation to restrictive physical interventions. So that's that element of your question. In terms of children and young people and how we keep children and young people safe, obviously all schools and all officers comply and follow the Wales protection procedures. So if there's ever any concern about the welfare of children and young people from a safety or safeguarding perspective, then Mandy and her colleague are on hand to provide support. That does not take the place of the support from IIA, of course, and we always encourage schools to reach out to IIA to ask for support and guidance in relation to any concerns that they have. So, you know, as Councillor Andrews said, the focus is on developing a culture of safeguarding across the organisation and across our schools. And Mandy will come in a second in relation to the national training framework. But, you know, everything that we're doing is underpinned by that training that we provide, that professional learning across layers. So from teachers to all staff across schools and all staff across this organisation. And your other question related to training across this organisation, I think. So Mandy can come in and see if we can follow that up.
So in relation to training, so I've been working collaboratively with Gwent Safeguarding Board colleagues, with regional and national SEG members, to ensure the new framework is implemented and embedded within Caerphilly. So we've grouped practitioners, governors, councillors. We've grouped them into groupings according to the framework. And I think your question was around, will governors have the same training as councillors and committee members? Yeah, so that'll be different. So governors are considered under Group F. So Group F, governors will have to complete the Group A safeguarding online e-learning training, with basic awareness training, and then governors will have a bespoke package. So schools will deliver to governing body, and then myself and Tony Usley, the safeguarding officer, will deliver to safeguarding governors and to chair governors. So that package will be bespoke for governors and their roles and responsibilities around safeguarding. Does that completely answer your question?
Yeah, there was one other. About checks. How do you check to make sure that training is being completed? Sorry about that noise. How are checks? Because it's some training's online. I'm not sure. Is this training online? How would you check that the training's been completed?
So I'll be working closely in respect to governors, closely with the local authority governor support officer, Lisa Downey. We will try and keep a track of all governors and check against the list of governors and what training they've completed to make sure they're compliant on a 3-year rolling programme. So chair governors and safeguarding governors, I'll be keeping a check on those that attend my training for those, and schools will keep a record of the governing body training. And we've asked the chair of governors as well to keep that record to make sure everyone is compliant. In terms of school staff and setting staff, then we ask schools to send us a list of all the school staff that have completed the training. Then we keep a record of that and we send it through to the corporate iTrent system. So there's a corporate training record for each staff member within the local authority, whether that's local authority staff or schools and setting staff.
Okay, Thank you. There was one question that hasn't been answered. It was to really assess how in depth the training is, because I've studied psychology, and there's an inappropriate attachments that pupils might have. Are teachers trained to recognise these attachments? Because this might be an indication of safeguarding issues. So I'm just trying to understand how in depth is the training?
So the safeguarding training aligns with the Gwent Safeguarding Board training. So we've adopted that training package. We've broken it down into a face-to-face delivery model, and then under Model 1, and then Model 2 then is embedded learning. So the schools are provided with case studies, activities, and then that includes trauma-informed ACEs training. So all that is incorporated within the whole training package for schools. And of course, you know, the education psychology services as well, they provide their own training to make sure school staff and setting staff are up to date with any sort of current standards.
There's a comprehensive package of professional learning from the Educational Psychology Service, and obviously support for schools from school-based counselling teams. So aligned with the safeguarding training, there's a whole plethora of other training that is available to support skills development across schools and settings.
Brilliant, thank you. That's very reassuring.
Okay, thank you for that comprehensive response. I've got two hands showing on the screen, and I have one in the chambers. Dave Bazina, would you like to jump in next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry I didn't raise this at the pre-meeting, but just looking, paragraph 518 and refers to the report commissioned by Gwent Safeguarding Board focusing on tackling racism in Wales. It says the LA has developed a local anti-racist action plan. I'm not asking for details today, but I would welcome sort of some information regarding that action plan, because, you know, some of the trends we've seen emerging or possibly re-emerging in the wider society, you know, would certainly be concerned if those start to filter their way into the schools. So I would welcome, you know, perhaps sight of that plan. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. Are Officer able to follow that one up?
Yeah, certainly. We developed that, as you said, as a result of something that was commissioned by the Safeguarding Board. We have a local plan for Caerphilly and a regional plan, so happy to provide an opportunity to share that in whatever mechanism is most appropriate.
Okay, looking at the screen, I've got Councillor Ariana Leonard.
Thank you, Chair. In 5.9 of the report, it discusses the self-evaluation process that the schools take part in, the SRE reports, they do those regularly. I was just wondering what the self-evaluation process was for the local authority, and like the service that they provide to the schools and how that's kind of monitored. Is there a way we can measure that that shows like a meaningful and a supporting way for our schools to make sure that they're getting the support that they need? Thanks.
Thank you. I mean, I suppose the most recent evaluation of our performance is multifaceted. One was our Estin inspection report from 2024, which talked about how the Education Department contributed to a culture of safeguarding and its robust practices. And then we also contribute to the corporate self-evaluation where, you know, we are all in the departments across the council held to account for our safeguarding practices. Mandy, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Schools complete their own safeguarding self-evaluation, which is collated within the local authority. I quality assure the safeguarding self-evaluation for schools. It's audited along with the school safeguarding audit on a 3-year rolling programme. And then midpoint, we ask schools to submit an updated safeguarding self-evaluation then, just so we can keep on top of then the safeguarding arrangements within that environment and that setting. We also complete MERs, monitoring evaluation reports, as a means of evaluating our own, or self-evaluating, I guess, our own systems in terms of self-evaluation.
That's great. I just wondered whether there was a chance for the schools to feed back to how they felt that the local authority worked alongside those, whether that might be worth something, might be an idea that we could work towards, that they are getting that feedback and we are understanding if they're feeling like they're being seen. That's all I was just thinking.
If I can just come in as well. We do have an annual survey to schools where we ask for feedback on how the different departments do across education. Safeguarding is always part of that, and we always get really strong and really positive feedback from our schools who really welcome and really value the support that we get from the safeguarding service as well. So that's an annual thing. And if there were anything in particular that came back from that survey to suggest that we could do something better, we always have a follow-up conversation with the heads where we kind of unpick what aspects we can improve as well.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, thank you for adding that, Paul. One more question on the screen, Councillor Allsworth.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to Part A, with safeguarding and trying to complete that online, I encountered difficulty while doing it, dragging answers together. Who do I go to for help on this? A head teacher or to you directly in the local authority, please?
You can contact myself directly within the local authority and I can support and guide you through that. But the head teachers will be fully au fait with the Group A training, because some of the school staff will be completing that as well. So they will be able to help and guide you through that as well.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, there's no other questions showing. Sorry, we've just... Councillor Roberts, just called to.
Thank you, Chair. Diolch. It's just I'm listening in with interest. Can I go back to Mr. Bazina's comment? Regarding that, I too am concerned and I'm interested. It's just that, just as a point of information maybe, but I suppose the officers are aware, some of our schools, especially some of our private primary schools, have additional sessions that they organise when it comes to the point that Mr. Bazina raised. And I'd like to, it would be nice really if some of the other schools were able to do this. Maybe the only way to do that kind of thing, as in looking at racism, etc. One of the schools that I'm a governor on have been doing this for a few years. And it's surprising the effect that it gets on the people who are in the meeting when you get proper people coming in to speak and to say, this is what you need to be looking at, not just in the school, but in your villages. It's been rewarding. And some of our schools are doing it. I don't think that all of our schools are doing it. Possibly the only way that they can is if the authority may be paid for it. One of my schools is doing it and are using money from their own budget. It's not a criticism, it's just a point of information. And if we're looking at this thing, please bear it in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Roberts. Can we move on to the recommendations, Mark, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The recommendation is on page 42 of your packs, and it's that members are requested to note the contents of the report, which I think we've done this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mark. This report's for noting only. If we go on to agenda item number 9, additional support delegation is pages 51 to 58 within the report. Councillor Carol Andrews, Cabinet Member for Education and Communities, to lead on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is presented to update members regarding the progress of the proposal regarding the delegation of additional support and to seek views and comments as part of the consultation process prior to a Cabinet decision. A priority of the Education Service is ensuring compliance within the Additional Learning Needs and the Education Tribunal Wales Act 2018 and associated code, ensuring that statutory duties for pupils with additional learning needs are met. The Additional Learning Needs and the Education Tribunal Act, Wales Act 2018 provided an ideal opportunity for the additional support allocation process to be refreshed. Eston has recognised the good practice in additional learning needs within the local authority and schools. However, Eston, in our Local Authority Inspection Report 2024, has endorsed this need for the work to be completed. In Caerphilly, funding for additional support for schools has historically been retained centrally. The budget for additional support is currently £6.7 million, and this includes the employment of centrally employed teaching assistants. Schools utilise the funding to support them and to undertake the responsibility for developing additional learning needs provision and ensuring children's needs are met. A working group with local authority officers and head teachers from primary and secondary schools was re-established in order to take this work forward. Local authority officers identified the need to increase funding in this area, thus demonstrating a recognition of the concerns raised by schools. The head teachers in the working group agreed an approach that was shared more broadly with all head teachers, subject to further discussions and the required consultation process. Local authority officers have worked with schools to share the proposed models for delegation and to address any barriers to delegation. Should there be Cabinet agreement to delegate additional support to schools, local authority officers would be enabled to work differently with schools to review existing principles and practices, support the leadership of additional learning needs in schools, model and scaffold approaches, and ensure the ongoing collaborative approach to inclusion and additional learning needs. The local authority will establish an executive consultation group with head teachers and local authority officers to meet monthly to review key decisions and changes. There is a commitment to review the formula for delegation every 2 years and to ensure that Welsh Government grants are maximised to support additional learning needs in schools. The recommendations in 3.1 ask members to consider the information contained in the report and provide comments and feedback. Endorse the recommendation to Cabinet to proceed with the delegation of additional support to schools through a preferred option, and these options are set out in 5.10 of this report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Andrews. Sarah, let's lead of inclusion, Eileen. Would you like to add anything or just wait for questions?
Happy to wait for questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We have one question from the pre-meeting, Mr. Bazzina. Okay,
thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions. I don't know whether you want me to take them as one batch. I mean, if I do, I'm happy to come back to any of them, obviously, if you feel any clarification. So the first one, I couldn't see anywhere in the report any indication of a sort of targeted implementation date. And, supplementary question to that is if it does come in, would you be looking at, basing any implementation on the council's financial year, or would it be based on the school year, so April, September? And that obviously ties into the 2-year reviews then. When in the cycle would those reviews start taking place? How long before the start of the next cycle? You referred, Councillor Andrews, to the executive consultation group of officers and head teachers. I'm just wondering where in the ongoing consultation that there's any input for parents and governors, given that the whole thrust of the Additional Learning Needs Act is about ensuring that sort of service users are regularly consulted with. I'm just a bit concerned that there doesn't seem to be any sort of process for further consultation with parents and governors. Some clarification sought on the preferred options. I know part of the recommendations is a possibility of actually going with one of the options. I must confess from my personal view, and I've had discussions with a couple of head teachers on this, and I think it wasn't clear cut. I mean, I think if I remember, the preferences expressed was 24, 22 and 11% for the various 3 options. So it wasn't clear cut in terms of any of those. And I'm not sure whether expressing a preferred option at this stage, prior to the consultation process is necessarily the best way forward. Paragraph 511 talks about contingency funds. And I think there was some concern about whether those are extensive enough. It talks about, for the relevant section, it talks about contingency funds where there are children coming in from other authorities outside of Wales, and also for life-changing situations. A bit concerned that there could be situations where a child might have a significant need for their IDP to be reviewed, or their needs to be reviewed for other reasons other than coming in from outside of the county. I mean, any move of school for some of these children could be quite disruptive, and I'm not quite sure how you would cater for a situation, someone coming from another local authority in Wales, or indeed even within this local authority, a process which could be quite distressing for them. I want to just refer to the Estin report back in December 2024, and one of the things it identified in that report was existing inconsistencies. I think it said across local authorities, inconsistencies remained in the interpretation of ALN code and in the subsequent approaches to school maintained and local authority maintained individual development plans. It's just a concern that there are already existing inconsistencies in how schools operate. I'm not saying not just in Caerphilly, obviously that was a global report, across Wales report, but how do you intend to ensure that this process of devolving decisions to schools doesn't actually potentially increase inconsistencies in approach? And finally, you'll be pleased to know one of the things that I noted in 10.5 was significant in terms of the head teachers was the additional support that they feel they need and was concerned about, and that's in relation to the potential for schools obviously having to deal with challenges which could go through the disputes resolution services or indeed legal challenges. And I think there's some concern out there on head teachers about what support they would have from the local authority in those circumstances. Sorry, that's quite a lengthy list. If you want me to come back to them after you've answered, I'm more than happy to do so. Thanks, Chair.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Brazina. Okay, Care.
Right. First of all, I'll start with the implementation. So we have been attempting to do this, and I'm not joking, for about 20 years that I know of, okay? It's been attempted several times, but never was it more important to do this than now, with diminishing resources and increasing need. We have so many schools and they're all different. Some of this resource in some schools is cash. That's very simple to implement. Some of this resource involves centrally employed people, and obviously we'd have to manage that process across to schools, and schools will have different arrangements and different things. So they will all have to be done case by case basis. In a timescale that best protects the continuity for children. Children come first. Every answer I could start with, children come first, don't they? Then we have schools who are using agency staff who are very settled in schools, and head teachers would like to keep exactly who they've got now. But maybe they would like to employ them permanently, or maybe they would like to continue with agency. Our encouragement will be to employ people permanently, train them up, and all the things you'd expect me to be saying. So what I'm saying in a nutshell, in answer to that question, is we have to look at each school. We know the schools very, very well, and we'll have to tailor the implementation for each school. Some schools can whiz across to it if that's the decision that's made. Others will take up to Easter. But I think what's important is that certainly in the new financial year, we are looking at a settled position, everyone, so that the ongoing reviews can be timed in that way. One of my big reasons for wanting to advance this is to give schools increasing levels of certainty around ALN funding, because right now it is dependent on your success in a panel situation, and it can vary throughout the year and certainly across years. You can look at it in different ways, but I think it is more helpful for a school to know where they are, rather than invest a lot of time and effort into competing through a panel process. You have to have some process if you're allocating funding, and our processes have been identified by Estin as being particularly robust and fair. But it leads to a lot of workload and, levels of disappointment, which I'm sure those of you who are governors might have experienced. We want schools to focus on developing that provision across the school with people they know and trust in their employment, and people who are well trained and part of the school life and known to the children. So that's the first one. It'll be school by school, wherever they need, whenever's best for the children. But certainly by Easter, we would expect that to be settled. In terms of the executive group, that's because when we're making strategic decisions for school and leadership and management, head teachers, can give us the information we need centrally to give us that guidance on the best way forward. So it is definitely targeted towards leaders in schools because particularly around the professional learning needs, we want to develop a very full offer that is bespoke for school leaders, particularly around head teachers and ALNCOs. So it was deliberately targeted to school leaders because that's the issue we're targeting first. Could it extend to governors and pupils? Absolutely it could over time. But in the first instance, this is about a strategic professional learning development offer and embedding, should this go through Cabinet, embedding a new way of working that every change makes you anxious, doesn't it? There is undoubtedly, an anxiety that we give that support. So I think in my experience, when you work with a cross-section of head teachers, that always gives a confidence to every other head teacher and they feel more represented. I think the preferred options, I'll give you a simplistic view. We started off with one option, which was based on a pattern of provision over the last 3 years, and we're going up to 2022 at that point. Bit skewed by COVID, of course, wasn't everything then, but we went on figures around that, and then we took a pupil number amount into account. When that was worked through, that gave a very erratic picture across our school estate, and it bore little relation to the trends and patterns in the need that was identified. So we tried to put that right with option 2. We thought, okay, that one doesn't make sense. It's not relevant to the need that's out there now. We'll try and make that better because we picked up trends in certain year groups, particularly after COVID, that were struggling more than other year groups. So we adapted it and had another run at making it closer to what looked fair. And actually, at the time, that wasn't a bad one because it was far more based on the reality. But as time went on with the consultation and all the various aspects of the consultation we wanted to explore thoroughly, by the time we came to have a look at that again, it was completely out of date. At that point, I thought, I'm going to try being pragmatic here. Why am I hunting around for a formula when actually we absolutely know which pupils are having this in receipt of this additional support and why? And we've had a panel system that has been fair and robust and operated on the same criteria. So we then looked at the pattern of support that was in schools at its highest peak in 24-25. So in other words, schools would be receiving at least what they'd received at that point. And then no one would be in a position where they were having to lose support or turn support away from individual pupils. They were going to have exactly what they'd had at their highest point. That didn't match either number 1 or number 2. So here we go. If I'm a head teacher who wants the best for my school, I'll be going for option 2, possibly. Okay. If I want the option that is going to be fair for every head teacher in this authority and not take money out of a system that then causes that school to be in detriment, and more importantly, those pupils to be in detriment, I go for option 3, because option 3 means that no school is at detriment. Everyone has what they've had at its highest point. And yes, I could have won a lot more on option 2 or option 1. I could have lost a lot more in option 2 or option 1 in some cases. But actually, option 3 means every school gets what they've had at their highest point. So I'm not going to have any head teacher saying, what do I do with the support that I'm now not having? Everyone is in a position that is relevant to their need at the time. Is there enough money to give everyone exactly what they would want to have to, meet this agenda? No, there isn't. There isn't in Caerphilly and there isn't nationally. But what I've discovered over time and my experience in school myself is that sometimes it's not about money. It's about the way you train staff, the way you value those staff, the way you work alongside those staff. And I think that's what we now need to focus on now as a council, that we give that support to schools in that way. Sorry, I'm only on number 3. Contingency fund, big discussion around this, because the danger is if we have a contingency fund, does that turn into another panel? And are we back to square one? I do not want to remove that panel situation only to rediscover it and be arguing over a much smaller pot of money. Therefore, it's important that we really ring fence that and make it for exceptional circumstances. But our idea is that that group of head teachers, and that's got to be thrashed out a bit, that we will decide that together. But the cleanest way that I've seen across the country is when it's a family coming from outside who you haven't got that backstory about, we'll be able to give that support. And contingency might not be money, it might be people, it might be additional staff time. It'll be wherever it needs to be to assist that situation to settle down. I'll just talk about the challenge bit at the end, and then I'm going to hand over to Sarah and Irene, who are technically far better at giving you information about the code than I am. In terms of the challenges, schools, are increasingly challenged to deliver and on this agenda. It is what, every head teacher will talk to you about. The need is increasing, and the number of children with those needs, that number's increasing, and head teachers want to meet the needs of all their pupils as well as they can. That goes without saying. But there is more external challenge, and there's a nervousness around that sometimes. We have to share that responsibility. Pupils in Caerphilly schools are our pupils and the school's pupils. We stand shoulder to shoulder in making sure we do the best possible thing for those children. And that's what we aspire to do. And we do that together. And there will be no difference whether we delegate this money or whether we don't. We will still stand together and support each other for the needs of that child. If I go to Sarah and Irene, to the technical bit.
Thanks, Kerry. Picking up on the point about, standing shoulder to shoulder and supporting, your last question was around the challenges that you've heard head teachers raise around particularly complex situations where we might find ourselves in an arena like a tribunal, for example, and how would schools be supported. And what we've been very, very clear with schools about in that space is that we will continue to support exactly the same way that we support now. And in fact, should Scrutiny and Cabinet be minded to endorse this position, LA officers will have some time that they wouldn't have had before because of the panel processes to reshape and work differently with schools, which will mean that we will be able to support with particularly challenging conversations with parents, for example, or support with seeking solutions in those most complex cases, working together so that we are not in situations where we are in conflict. So I would just, reinforce that message about continuing to work together. And one of the suggestions that we've made already to head teachers in a letter that I've sent to heads in the last week is that the themes that have emerged from their feedback in the consultation will take the form of surgeries with head teachers and key leaders in schools. So we have 7 different themes that have emerged, one of which is around how we work together to respond to tribunal appeals and those most difficult situations. And another one is how we support with managing those really difficult conversations with parents. So in the new year, we'll be looking at putting together surgery for leaders to focus on those amongst the 7 of the themes that we've seen. In terms of the Estin report around implementation of ALN and more recently, obviously, the Welsh government announcement around their review of ALN, I think it'd be fair to say that, from the beginning, local authorities have had to be flexible and responsive to changes that have emerged, not least of which was an implementation period of 3 years that then became an implementation period of 4 years. You'll know from our resting report last year that we were complimented for our strategic approach, for our thoughtful approach to implementation of ALN, for the support that we've provided to schools. And again, in terms of that ability to respond to changes and challenges, we will continue to do that, but with even greater capacity should there be an opportunity for us to work differently with schools. And that will enable us to look at things like, how are we developing our additional learning provision? How is that reflected in IDPs? Right at the beginning of implementation, we did a lot of work with ALNCOs across individual schools and clusters to look at, how do we write IDPs? How do we write effective outcomes? How do we know that schools are doing that similarly? And we will be revisiting that from the new year to make sure that we, where schools have greater ownership in some ways of that process, we are alongside them, supporting them, and then working with them in clusters and across clusters, making sure that there are similar approaches.
Okay, thank you for that, both for that in-depth response. Mr. Bazim would like to come back in on that?
Yeah, just thank Kerry and Sue for a comprehensive report. I mean, it's I don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware of the excellent work that's sort of done in Caerphilly and appreciative, but obviously changes like this do cause some uncertainties, and it is a difficult area. But yeah, I'm certainly reassured. Welcome the reassurances given. One plea I would make in terms of any sort of discussions that are coming out of the executive group, there is regular sort of feedback and consultation, I think, with head teachers, governors, parents, etc. But yeah, thanks for that. That's reassuring.
Thank you, Mr. Bazina, and thanks to the officers for the in-depth response. I have another question highlighted on the screen. Councillor Shacken Dawson.
I did have a few questions, but most of them have been answered. But I'm a school governor, and I was speaking to the headmistress, and an issue came to mind while I was speaking, because there's obviously allocated a sum, but if, say, for example, one pupil had a need for an intervention that no other pupil needed, that would still cost the same for that one pupil as it would for multiple pupils, and it wouldn't be value for money. And I know you say the pupil always comes first, but then that would spread their funding very, very thinly, and at the expense of other interventions that might be needed more. And what would you do in that instance? Would schools work together, and if that child could share with another school? I don't understand how you would approach that sort of situation.
I think you've done an excellent job of answering your question, because one of the things that we would certainly be continuing to discuss with schools and promote with schools is that idea of a model of cluster working. So, how they utilise the resources that they have to develop the provision that they need to meet the identified additional learning needs, and that's what this is all about. So we know that schools are different. We know that schools are larger or smaller, and we know that we have, excellent models of cluster working, either within the locality or more broadly across the borough. So we would want to work with schools to look at how we could develop provision in that way if it were appropriate.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions answered. We need to move on now to selecting an option. I understand from Kerry's response, the preferred option was option 3. Could I move option 3 and look for a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dawson. The poll will appear on the screen if you could vote for, look at the poll, option 3 being the preferred. Okay, thank you.
Should be on your screen now, Chair.
Everybody okay with the voting slip? No issues? You okay? Okay, Liz, thank you. So we down here now. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, I've just turned over. Just moving on to recommendations. Mark, if we've got the recommendations.
Yeah, just first of all, on the obviously you've been asked to consider to endorse a preferred option from the options set out in 5.10 of this report. Option 3 was the preferred option, and that's been carried, Chair, 15 votes for, no votes against, and 1 abstention. So shall I move now to the substantive recommendation, Chair?
Yep, thank you, Mark.
So, members, the recommendations are on page 52 of your packs. 3.1, prior to a report being presented to Cabinet, scrutiny members are asked to A, consider the information contained in the report and provide comments and feedback. B, endorse the recommendation to Cabinet to proceed with the delegation of additional support to schools through a preferred option. And as we've just established, C, option 3 is the preferred option from the options set out in 5.10 of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, could I have somebody to move the report? Move, please.
Move, Chair.
Councillor Davis,
Councillor Davis, thank you. And somebody to second?
Second.
Councillor
Scrivens.
Councillor Scrivens, okay. Thank you, Councillor Scrivens.
Paul should be on the screen now, Chair. Yep, so that's been carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. And we move on to the final item, item 10 on the agenda, the school balances and overview. It's pages 59 to 84 in the report. And finally, I'd like to pass you back on to Councillor Carol Andrews again, the Cabinet Member for Education and Committee.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an overview of schools' reserve balances over recent years across Wales and for Caerphilly schools, and illustrates how they have reduced significantly. In addition, it provides details of the primary and secondary sectors for comparison. A more detailed financial position for Caerphilly schools is reported, together with the details of pressures that impact on the finances and planning. The recommendations in 3.1 ask members to note the contents of this report. Thank you.
Okay, and we have Jane Southcombe, Finance Manager, Education, Lifelong Learning. Anything to add?
Happy to take questions and apologise for all the numbers in the report.
Okay, we have one question from the pre-meeting, Councillor Shacken Dawson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, can reserves be held if gained by any other means other than the main fund, e.g. donations or ring-fence grants? Or is this added to the reserve?
Yeah, so often when a school receives some grant funding, there will be some terms and conditions. Well, not often. There will be terms and conditions attached to that, which would have a timeline to spend. So you wouldn't naturally expect grant funding to be rolled forward or carried forward as a reserve, because generally the school grants would align with the financial year. So that wouldn't happen. With regards to donations, etc., I mean, if a school had a donation, that would come into their budget, I guess. There might possibly be a different conversation around that, because that's not necessarily time constrained. Yeah, does that answer the question? Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just? You said that it wouldn't happen, but say they had a capital project and they were going to build an extra classroom, and there'd been a delay in the building work. that could easily happen, and that fund would have to be carried over then. So that could happen in theory.
Yeah, so we're probably talking about two different things. So,
All right.
so I'm probably sort of thinking in terms of the grant funding, which would tend to go through our school cost centres, would be revenue related. Anything of a more significant capital nature in terms of a grant would go through our colleagues in Sustainable Communities for Learning. But certainly some of our schools may decide that there is something that they want to invest in themselves. And you're quite right that they may have a surplus balance at the end of the year, and they sort of would like to roll that forward a little bit because they've got a planned project later that year or the year after. So certainly that is a possibility whereby sometimes schools' balances look a little bit higher carried forward because they've got those projects pending. That's certainly something we saw post-COVID. I guess there's a little bit less of that now as a lot of our schools have run those balances down. But yeah, that is something that is sometimes discussed with schools whereby their carry forward surplus is a bit higher than we would expect, but they may have something like that planned with regards to an investment in the building or something.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Jane. I have one more indication on the screen, Councillor Colin Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On a similar vein, it says as 5.1.2 that whereas school reserve exceeds a certain threshold, the authority can sort of claw some money back. If this actually happened?
Councillor Gordon, it's not something that we've actually actively done to date within Caerphilly. It's certainly something which is discussed as part of school budget forum. And Welsh Government have recently finished a consultation with regards to updating the school funding regulations. So that consultation has been published now this week, and we'll be having a little look at that to see what the guidance linked to that looks like. But certainly it's something as a local authority that we can look at. Where we have schools where their balances are in excess of the guidance, we ask them to submit a spending plan, because obviously, you know, as a local authority and Welsh Government we would want that money spent on the pupils who are attending the schools. So the schools would be required to submit a spending plan, and we would monitor against that plan to ensure that that money is being spent. Or there would be further conversations within the organisation. But to date, we haven't clawed anything back. But certainly, it's something which is on the discussion table, I guess. But to date, we haven't.
Thanks for that, because the school where I'm a governor at, I mean, we always seem to be struggling for money, so I don't think we'd have anywhere near that type of balance. Okay, thanks. Good to hear that.
Okay, thanks. Both. We have another indication, Councillor Shacken Dawson.
I was supposed to be supported by my fellow councillor, Councillor Davis. Or she was going to ask a question. I don't know if she wants to come in, or shall I? Because I wanted to make an amendment to the recommendation. I don't know if Councillor Davis wants to come in.
Councillor Davis, would you like to join in?
I didn't think it was my turn yet, so is that okay? I'm just commenting on point 569 of the report. We've recently seen 2 school closures as a result of reducing pupil numbers, and subsequent budget pressures. We've had this in lots of areas in the council, and therefore, would it be appropriate to establish a working group, which we've done before with the waste strategy? Because having worked on the waste strategy group, I found it was very successful. And perhaps if we worked on the same basis here, as there are a number of schools in deficit and projected deficits.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Davis. We'd like to move that as an amendment. Is it, Mark? Yeah, we'd like to move that as an amendment, Councillor Davis.
Thank you.
Well, I was, Chair, I was going to recommend it as an amendment to set up a working group to look at rising surplus spaces in schools with deficit budgets. And I also was on the waste strategy group and thought it was very successful. And could I also suggest pausing the current Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, where projects have been progressed in full business case submission to the Welsh Government until the outcome of the group is known?
Yeah, thank you, Shag. Councillor Shag Dawson, do you want to move that?
I do, yes.
Okay, and do we have a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second that. I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. We need to go to the vote. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, that's been carried. 14 votes for, no votes against, and 1 abstention.
Okay, we now move on to the recommendations, Mark. Yeah.
Yep, thank you, Chair. The recommendation is on page 59 of your packs, and it's just requesting that members note the contents of this report, which we've done this evening, with the inclusion of establishing a working group as discussed. So, thank you, Chair.
That concludes, Mark. Yep, and that concludes the evening. Okay, thank you everybody for attending. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Chair, can I just ask, how will the working group be formed? Will they be contacted by email?
Yeah, I'm sure one of the officers would like to come in. Yeah. Rob Archer.